DJ Event Planner will change the way you manage and run your business. Streamline all of your procedures and software into one easy-to-manage system. DJ Event Planner, the ultimate online planning tool.
Good morning, everyone. It is another lovely Monday morning, and it's time to talk about ways to keep money, make money, and do really cool things. And today we're joined by the one and only Jason Spencer. Good morning, Jason.
Good morning, John. How are you doing?
I am doing well, doing very, very well. So you have been going to DJ conventions and meetings and different things, and you've been helping people really get a handle on their income and their cash flow.
I'm trying. Not everybody wants to hear it. Not everybody wants to believe that this can be as simple as it is. Now, of course, simple and easy are two different things, but that the process is actually fairly simple. It's actually interesting. I just, you know that when you've seen me deliver this Profit First presentation before, I equate it to my weight loss when I talk about it. I actually share my story of weight loss. In fact, in the most recent issue of Disc Jockey News, I talked about putting some of that weight back on.
And that's what I wanted to do. Actually, before we get into the other, I wanted to kind of dig into that. So this is a great segue into that, so you can kind of share a little bit. And for those of you who didn't get a chance, you can go out to discjockeynews.com/ I believe it's e-edition or discjockeynews.com, and then you can click on the e-edition, and you can go check out the article.
It's out there somewhere.
it's exactly. I don't remember if I have a quick link made to that, but yeah, let's talk about that.
Yeah. So, I mean, the short and skinny of it is a number of years ago, my mother passed away. And by a number, I mean 6 years ago. But my mother passed away. I got into a rather dark depression place, and I packed on some pounds. I was already a large guy. I packed on a lot more. Had pretty much approached the 400 mark at one point, and that was just over 2.5 years ago. And I hit this point where I said, okay, I need to lose this weight. I really have to do something. That point, by the way, was doing 2 events back to back, 2 very large weddings, lighting, the whole works out there. And I came home and basically was out of commission for about 4 days straight. That was my kind of tipping point, if you will.
Sure.
And so I went in, I got some help, worked with a registered dietitian, and over the course of a year, I lost over 165 pounds. I went from what was, I mean, when I clocked in and started that, it was 360-ish on their scale in the clinic. And now I had done a little bit of work before I got in there, but I plateaued. And so that's when I looked for some help. And when exactly 1 year later, when I left the program, it was 215 pounds. And so I had lost, this 165 pounds. And, I thought I knew what I was doing. I thought I had it all in place. And over the course of really 6 months, I added about 10 to 15 pounds back on, which was expected because I had gone from what was essentially a diet and a low-calorie diet to bringing back in carbs and other various types of food that I had been avoiding for the previous year that helped with weight loss. So we knew I would pack on a few more pounds.
So let's kind of hold that. I want to go back before you started the process and such. You mentioned, of course, depression, and there's a lot of we've both been to DJ conventions, and weight is a struggle for a lot of us because of lifestyle. What's beyond the depression? What were some of those bad habits that we all have, unfortunately, that can get us to that point where we're putting on the weight and not able to keep it off?
Right. So, I mean, if you think DJ lifestyle, we obviously work some strange hours. We're not your typical 9 to 5.
Yep. So
at the end of the night, you're hungry after an event. Maybe you didn't get to eat at the event. I know some schools of thought is you don't eat at the event. So
right.
I fell in that habit of hitting a drive-through every night after an event. So Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I'm calories upon calories and carbs and everything else, bad choices. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing necessarily. There are optimal choices you can make in a drive-through versus, a cheeseburger and fries every night. So those started to add up. One of my worst habits was actually being a solopreneur, working for myself, not having an office that I necessarily went into that wasn't my house, I would go out to our local, it's a California pizza chain that we have, but
yes, I know it very well.
I would go to their lunch buffets. And I got to the point where I would do this 2 or even 3 times a week, and I would mindlessly just start to snack on pizza while I got my laptop out and I'm there for 2 hours. They don't say anything to me. They know me. They love me there. And I just sit there and I'd work at the table, snacking on food and putting calorie after calorie into my body and not working it off. And so that's kind of the other end of that spectrum of being depressed, is if you're someone like me, that when you're depressed, you eat, and then you become more depressed, well, that leads to more eating, and then you just feel horrible at the end of the day. That was my cycle for quite some time, actually. It was just trying to find a way to remove that distraction of my mother's death, and that became food that then I tried to couple with work and say, okay, well, I'm distracting myself with work, when in reality I was distracting myself with food. And so it was kind of this habit cycle of depression that I had to figure out how to break that loop, how to, the pizza, for example, going to lunch, I had to say, okay, why am I doing the lunch? How do I insert something different here? It doesn't mean that I can't ever have pizza again. It just means I shouldn't be doing buffets. Right. So maybe I find somewhere that I can get a small pizza, the little personal pizzas that are only 6 or 8 inches in diameter. Then that I can insert as the fix for getting a pizza. That solves my brain and my stomach issue of, hey, I want that flavor. But it puts a portion control onto it. It puts a quantity that I can't have more than that size. If I get it, maybe I don't eat there, I get it to go, so I'm not in the environment of the smells and the ambiance and everything else that encourages me to do that. So it's breaking a couple things to change that habit. It's not completely removing it, because habits, you start to do it, and this is kind of, I know we jumped back a little bit, but where we'll end up back to is that most people, when they try to change a habit, it's a willpower issue. And willpower is kind of like a muscle. It fatigues over time. And that's what happened to me when I started putting the weight back on, was a fatigue. I thought I knew what I was doing, and then my brain started letting these little other things slip in. So, certainly. I had gone a year without, I'm not a big drinker anyway, but I had gone absolutely no alcohol and no other empty carb type drinks. And it was mostly water or some fruit juices, but not even really any fruit juices. It was very much a water-based liquid diet, if you will, in that terms, that I was having 2 to 3 liters of water a day, low carbs, low calories. And then as I added those things back in, I got back into a little bit of a habit that I shouldn't have. Not necessarily the pizza, but just other things that were, okay, I can have that extra serving of this, or I'm going to have some fries. So, there was no harm in having the large fries. It's only an extra ounce of fries anyway, which in the bigger scheme of things, those add up, and that's where you start to get into trouble.
How much of and again, this all kind of ties together, because a lot of the same struggles that Jason's talking about work in our business too, and that's why I wanted to kind of dig into this, because not only for those of us who are the health side of it, but for the business side, we'll tie it together. When you went and you were at that point where it's time to go get help, and you went and checked in, what were some of the biggest changes that were kind of a shock to your system in that early time, when they said basically, okay, you went from this, now here's where you've got to be dietary wise and lifestyle wise?
It's interesting, because so I saw a team of professionals. When I went in, they ran the whole blood work spectrum. They, weight, size of my waist, size of other things, just what is my overall physical condition. They did an EKG on me to make sure my heart was good. Part of that is because I did, and for those that had been at, oh my gosh, I think it was 4 years ago now, when Penn Jillette was the keynote at Mobile Beat. I don't know if you were there. I think you were, but if you remember, he came out, and most of us are used to large Penn Jillette, and he came out and was skinny as a pencil, and everybody went, "What happened?
Is he
sick? Is he dying? What's going on?" I later read in an interview that he actually did a very similar diet to what I did. It's called a VLCD, very low calorie diet. And as a result of that, you really need to be monitored, because instead of the normal anywhere from 1,500 to 2,500 calories that a normal human being should bring in, I was actually I started at about 800 to 900 calories a day. And under supervision, it can be done. That's part of the reason why I had a large water intake. I had a large salt intake as a result of that as well. Something that sounds like it contradicts itself, but what it does is it puts you into ketosis, so your metabolism drops to about 80% anyway. And there are other various things inside the body that are changing. So I had this team of, I refer to them all as my coaches, really. It's my medical provider, my dietitian. My dietitian actually doubled as my support class coach. So we had a group of about, anywhere on the low side, we'd have about 8 people in the class to 16 people in the class. And once a week, we'd go in, and for an hour, we would talk about our struggles, talk about our wins. And that is a long answer to your question, but that, I think, is really what made it work, was having someone there to not only, the process wasn't, this is what you're doing wrong and this is what you need to get to. It was, where do you want to be? And for me, it wasn't that 215. It's not even where I am right now, which is about 265. It wasn't getting to that number in my mind, because I was 360 when I entered this program. I was like, hey, if I can get down to 325, I'll be happy. If I can get to 330, I'll be happy. If I can just get 20 pounds off, I'll be happy. Sure. That was where I was at the time. And the first, 20 to 30 pounds actually came off pretty quick. About a month and a half, 2 months, I was down 30 pounds. And so that little bit of success translated in my mind to, hey, this isn't as hard as I thought. Maybe I can do another 10 pounds. And so that's really where my goals became. It wasn't a long-term goal that seemed unattainable. It wasn't, I want to lose 165 pounds, because I never thought that I could. And that, that's negative thinking, but the truth is, to say I'm going to lose 165 pounds, I know I can't do that overnight. Yeah. There's no magic pill that's going to do that. But to see that at the end of a month, I might be able to lose 10 pounds, or I might be able to lose 20 pounds in this case on this diet, that became something I could reach and a goal that I could make. And so every time I would reach this smaller goal, I would set a new goal, and that would get me to the finish line. And it wasn't, it's like the 400-yard dash. I wasn't looking to do 400 yards. I was looking to do 75 yards, and then the next 75 yards. Yes. And then eventually I would make it to that 400. But the 400 was never even really in my mind. It was getting just a couple pounds off. Mm-hmm. And they supported that process. And I think that's, how that translates back to our business. I think that's where having coaches in business come into play, or even just mentors and colleagues. Not saying that you have to pay somebody to help you do this, but there are other people that are willing to answer your question. You can pick up the phone and have an hour-long conversation with somebody and bounce ideas off of them. And a good mentor or friend in the industry is probably going to listen to that and give you ideas that you can work with. And then maybe you take those ideas to a coach that you are paying to work with and investing in yourself and your business to do that. And then they help you execute and implement that in the business.
One of the things with your team of your coaches, I'm going to call those, with the health side of it, is they gave you an outline or a plan, and you stuck to that plan for that year to have the success you did. And I think that's one of the things in the DJ world, is that sometimes the people will be shared a plan, a plan will be shared with them, or they'll pick up things, and they'll have the greatest intention, but to carry through is so difficult. And that's one of the things that was just so surprising to see how well, and I shouldn't say surprising, but it was so cool to see is that when you were on that and working that plan on that, it worked well and you had success.
Yeah. And kind of going back to the story from this month's issue, it took me 50 pounds to figure that out, and really not quite the full year. It really started to come back on as I made a lifestyle change. It wasn't so hard to maintain that 215 to 230 range in the first, from basically January through about October. And then And then in October, my wife and I moved to a new house. And it was not that far away from the part of town we were in, but it changed everything from where I work at home to any of the restaurants that are nearby, the grocery stores that we shop at. Everything had changed in that world. And so what I thought I still knew that I was doing, my routine got shifted. I had a fairly set routine of, this is pretty much what I do Monday through Friday. This is what I do Saturday and Sunday when I'm working. And it fell apart. Mm-hmm. And it took me 10 pounds to go, oh, I can fix this. And then it took me 20 pounds to go, no, really, I can fix this. And then by the time I got to 50 pounds, I went, no, I need to go back in and see what I'm doing wrong. And so I reached out to my team again, those dietitians, and I sat down with them. I said, this is what I'm doing. And she goes, well, are you still tracking your food? Are you watching what you're bringing in? I'm like, in my brain, I'm not writing it down anymore. And she's like, well, let's start there. So we started there, and I was like, okay, this is where I'm kind of leaking all over the place with my calories. And even beyond the calories, the macronutrients, so my percentage of fat and carbs and protein and whatnot. Those were things that, again, subconsciously, I thought I knew what I was doing, but it wasn't until I went back in that I got back on that plan. And so we started with a maintenance, and that's where we've been for a few months. And now we're in a point where we're starting to lose the weight again. But it was really, again, it wasn't a long-term goal of, oh my gosh, I want to get back to that 215. I mean, yes, certainly that is a very long-term goal that I have right now. But rather than being as aggressive in the weight loss, we're looking at how can we maintain the weight and then start to bring it down slowly, which is a little bit more of a healthy way to do it anyway. But that was something that when I first realized I needed help again, I mean, that sounds so bad to be like, oh, I need help. But no,
it's reality,
it was I can't do it alone type of situation.
Yeah, exactly.
It was the reason why when you work out of the gym, you do better with a coach than you do when you're doing it by yourself. It's the reason why when you're on a diet like this, you do better with someone who is understanding of the nutritional values of all the food that you're taking in and can guide you into better choices and better options and a much better solution. And it's interesting you said that, because trying to see, I got it way on the other side of the room, but the plan that they put together with me, I actually... It's a full binder. I actually have a different one over here, I think. But, we got 2 binders that are just inch and a half thick binders that are nothing but weight loss material. So it's all things on the education side of it, things on the meal planning and understanding of what those macronutrients are, how they affect everybody differently. And, that's the other piece to it, is it's not a one size fits all. What works for me is not necessarily going to work for you. It's not going to work for Mitch Taylor. It's not going to work for Bill Herman. Everybody's going to be a little bit different in how they react to these things.
Mm-hmm. So now we've talked about basically the trail or the path you've walked here for the last few years. Now, if we take out the word diet and food and take out a few, and we insert money and debt and
do we have time left for that? I just went a long race.
But there's so many similarities between the two. I mean, it's so easy to fall into the same unhealthy spending habits or unhealthy money habits, and putting accruing debt that you shouldn't have for doing different things by making those bad. I mean, there's just so many similarities, and I'm sure as you're seeing and talking and coaching people when it comes to their finances, that you can kind of maybe see that there is a kind of a correlation in a lot of these things.
There's a very big correlation to it, and the first thing you have to do is really. In the book, the original version of the book, I think we called it Getting Naked, and it was laying everything on the table and saying, where am I spending my money? So you will break out every expense that you have, see where the money is going. So maybe you're not saving for taxes. Maybe you're not paying yourself as the business owner. But more importantly, where are the expenses going? And off the top, 9 times out of 10, you can break about 10% of that off just by looking at a couple items and going, I didn't really need that other set of speakers this month. I bought a set of speakers last year and the year before and the one before that, and they all still work.
Right.
Now, that's not to say that you can't sell them and use that money to make a new investment in the business. That is okay. What you shouldn't do is have a $1,000 pair of speakers that you then turn around and buy a $2,000 pair of speakers that you just put yourself $1,000 down because you didn't save for it or anything like that. And more often than not, that's what happens is you've not saved to make the investment. So the business isn't putting money aside to invest in itself. It's just spending. And that's a key difference of investing versus spending are two very different ends of the spectrum. Spending is where most businesses get in trouble. And I got in trouble with that too a long time ago. Profit first was what dug me out of that hole. And which is why when I saw how it worked, I went, okay, I hope I can help other people with this.
Right.
I just didn't expect it to have such a profound kind of epiphany for most people when they see the process of it and go, oh my gosh, I've been doing it wrong the whole time. And the truth is you've not been doing it wrong. You just didn't fully understand the right way to do it. Mm-hmm. So you've been doing what you thought was right and you get caught in that habit. And so we have to figure out how to change that habit of investing, the habit of paying yourself, the habit of saving for your taxes. Nothing is worse than, in fact, that's when I got my influx of calls was somewhere between the end of January and the beginning of April was a number of people that saw me a year ago at Mobile Beat present and they go, what was that thing you told me about how I can pay my taxes on time? And I'm like, were you saving it for the last 12 months? No. Well, let's start for next year then.
We're going to work ahead. That'll work.
Yeah. But no, it's very transferable. The skills of, and it's not just diet and I don't even like the term diet, to be honest. Mm-hmm. I know I used it throughout this concept because there is a slightly different in the weight loss process versus the weight management process. But the truth is it's a lifestyle change, and that's how you have to look at something like Profit First or even if you're working with Mitch on sales or anything like that, it is a lifestyle change. This is not a Band-Aid fix. You're not going to run Profit First for 6 months and magically be perfect and then be able to go back to your old ways. This is something you have to work on each and every quarter. You look at the numbers and you reevaluate the business and you say, oh, just like when I was saying I go in and I get blood work done and all that. They would run my blood work every 2 weeks. They would run an EKG every 6 weeks. They would take my weight every single week. So those are things that we do with the business. We look at the financials. We look at what's in the bank accounts. Have you been paying yourself? Are you spending somewhere you shouldn't be spending versus investing? And even at that, while the goal is to be debt-free with Profit First and be able to run your business, that's not to say that loans are a bad thing or even credit cards are a bad thing. I know there's a lot of a lot of group out there that I'm not going to mention any names right now. It's Dave Ramsey. Yeah. There are Dave Ramsey people that will push back on me when I say that credit cards are okay. But the card is okay as long as you have a plan in place to pay it off. Mm-hmm. If you are bringing on a new hire, hopefully you have done the numbers and run those numbers to say, I need to invest in a new system or a new set of music, music library or something along those lines. That's perfectly fine, even if it's not in savings, as long as you have the plan and the forecasting to say this person will do X number of events, which will pay this off by this point in the future. So maybe you get a credit card with 0% APR as an introduction. You make the investment in that system at that point, and within 12 months or whatever that introduction rate is, you've paid off the card. You essentially got a 0% loan to do this.
Right.
And that is something that's okay as long as it's not breaking other parts of the business.
And that's such a, you mentioned, that thought and plan is so important with that, because I've now run into so many DJs who, well, I've turned down 17 gigs this summer, so I'm just going to add another system for next summer.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, you can just do that, but it just might have been a fluke that you were turning these events, but you need to have a plan and structure of how you're going to assure yourself.
Right.
And that's, again, part of that coaching.
It's a double-edged sword. And I've looked at my calendar and done the same thing. I'm like, if I had 10 other DJs for this weekend, I would have been able to send out 10 other guys, and that's great. But do I have 10 other weekends that I can send out 10 other guys? Yeah. Or was it 1 or 2 weekends throughout the year? And certainly we all have those dates that are magical dates on a calendar. I mean, I remember, what was it? 7707, right? I mean, that was the date to have. And, I think that I was working for another company at the time, and I was in sales. I want to say we probably turned away close to 42 events that day.
Ooh, wow.
And we had probably booked it up nearly, for all of our DJs, we had about 15 DJs in the company at the time. I think they were all booked up 8 to 9 months in advance, some of them a year and a half in advance. Now, granted, I live in San Francisco, which is a very large Asian culture. So those numbers mean a lot of things to the Asian culture. But there are times that you look at the calendar and you think, I should do this. And the truth is, you might need to look at the bigger picture. You might need to see, is it sustainable or is it a fluke? You're right.
Which gets us back to the idea of having the coach and mentors and the people around that you can use as a sounding board and get advice from people who have maybe done similar things, or at least to run the idea up the flagpole and see what their thoughts are.
Yeah. In fact, there was a thread the other day in it was Sales for Event Pros or Getting What You're Worth, one of the two groups. And I believe it was Jamie Bodie who told someone, he said, you need to stop listening to everybody. You're listening to too many different people that are giving you too many different angles, and you're trying to do too many different things at once. And that is actually, I have multiple coaches. They all do different things. I have a sales coach. I actually have my own Profit First coach back at Profit First headquarters. So yes, I'm certified, but I still get coaching for Profit First. Sure. I have an influence coach. She actually guides me on phrasings and things like that. But all of them together, they do have some overlap. They have some conflict, but the biggest piece that they all do is remove the emotion. And that is someone you need to talk to. And watching that thread, and this is nothing against Jamie, because I applauded him for saying that.
Certainly.
And it was very deep in the conversation. But being able to remove the emotion as a business owner, we love everything. I can go outside and say, I need to buy a new van to transport all this new equipment I'm going to buy, and I'm going to be able to do the biggest events in the world if I do that. Someone else will come back to me, remove that emotion, and go, that's the dumbest idea I've ever heard. and you'll cry and you'll argue with them for a little bit, and then you'll be like, yeah, you're right. You made your point. I understand why that's not the best idea right now. And I'm not against growth in a business, not at all. But I am for growth at the right time. So making the investment to grow the business is a very big thing, and you just have to fully understand what it is you're getting yourself into. Otherwise, you're going to start going backwards with it.
And that's so easy to do, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So let's kind of dig into let's kind of dig into it just a little bit, because we've got a little bit of time left here, and I don't want to take up too much of your time today, Jason. For those who are struggling with the finances, or getting towards that time of the year where we're going to be starting to enter into the slow season and such, what are some kind of starting points that they can really kind of do to start so they'll have a better 2018?
Oh gosh, there's so many.
It's
really what level you want to take it to. I think honestly, the biggest thing I would say is the takeaway that I do at the end of the Profit First presentation, and that is to open just one new account and start putting one small percentage of all of your income into that. So everything that comes into the business, put 1 or 1.5% into that account. Don't look at the account for the next quarter or the next 6 months or even the next year, and then see what's at the end of it. And then realize that 1 or 2% less that you've been running your business on is something that is sustainable. It's something you can do. Because I can guarantee you, if you could run your business on $100 today, you can run it on $99 tomorrow, or even $95 tomorrow, and most likely $90. That 10% that I said most people can cut out of expenses. It's scary. And I mean, being a business owner is scary. And being a solopreneur is even more scary, because we all have to look at the business side of it and say, well, what happens if something happens to me tomorrow? If I'm not here tomorrow, what happens to my clients? If I have a family, what happens to my family? Are my clients going to come after my family? That is a hard thing to deal with sometimes. And that's actually one way my depression went, actually, because it was dealing with death. Yes. And then I started thinking, well, what if something does happen to me? Yes, I have a clause in my agreement. Yes, I have an immense number of friends in the industry that would step up and take care of my business and make sure that my wife is not affected by that. But you have to think about it and go, okay, maybe it is time to become a multi-op, because then I can cover those bases. Okay, if I'm going to become a multi-op, do I need to start saving for that today? Do I need to run numbers to see if that is sustainable? What does that mean? One of the numbers that we've seen, not so much in the DJ industry, and this is one that I'm still trying to wrap my head around because, and I don't even want to say DJ, the events industry, weddings and events, the number that most people say you should be at before you bring on a second employee is about $250,000 in the business. That's what you should be generating in revenue each year. Mm-hmm. And I can tell you hands down, I've worked with and consulted with a number of businesses that are not even at 200,000 and they have 4 or 5, even part-time employees, but that number is for a full-time employee. But they'll have 4 or 5 part-time DJs working for them, and then they wonder why they're not making the money they should be making on their end, or they can't afford to keep a DJ there. I'm a big proponent of getting what you're worth, but I also understand the value in having a multi-op company. So when it comes to that, we need to find a way to start paying the DJs in the multi-op an understandable but livable wage. And that is something that I was fortunate enough to have in the company that I came up through. They were paying me a percentage of the events that made sense for me to be able to, I don't want to say survive, because that sounds like I'm barely above that line, mm-hmm. But I wasn't the owner of the business. And for the most part, I understood that. I knew I wasn't going to be getting 100% of an event, but at the same time, and it's made much more sense as I've gone through the Profit First process because it's all percentage based. At the same time, I've learned that there is a way to pay DJs a respectable, livable wage without feeling like they're going to burn out because they have to do 100 events per year to make $30,000. Right. And that's something that is, I mean, it's a sliding scale. You have to be able to charge the right price. You have to be able to understand who your talent is. Are they brand new talent that are college student, or are they a talent that you plan on having around 10 and 15 years down the road that is a major part of the business? Are they a salesperson? Are they an ops person? Are they actually going out and doing the events themselves? And Matt Radicelli is an excellent resource for this. Him and I both kind of come from the same Mike McAllowitz camp on that. So Pumpkin Plan and Profit First are two things he mentioned this year at the conference. Mm-hmm. And I was ecstatic to see him say it at the show, to be honest. I'm like, thank goodness I'm not the only one dropping Mike's name. And just as a side note, it hasn't been officially announced, but I did see it on the website. Mike is actually one of the keynotes at Mobile Meet next year. So I'm excited to see that come in. I'm not entirely sure what his topic is. I know it's not going to be Profit First because I've already spoken on that, but that should be good for most everybody in attendance, because Mike is not a sell from the stage kind of guy. He is very much take this, implement it, roll with it, do this in your business. So it's kind of inspiration and kind of multiple takeaways that you can implement almost right away in your business. So I love watching Mike speak. He's very engaging, very lots of stories. Mike likes to tell a lot of stories, so he sucks you in with the story and then gives you that punchline. You're like, oh my gosh, I never thought of it that way.
Yeah, I enjoyed the time when we did that interview with him, Mike. That was fun.
Yeah, we shouldn't have had the tequila before that. That's all I'm going to say. Mike Hasper, we were actually at a different conference he was presenting at, non-DJ related, but we were at a conference he was presenting. And he's like, well, do you want to have dinner before we go on with John? I'm like, sure, we'll go have dinner. And he ordered a margarita. I'm like, all right, I'll have a margarita too. And they came in these, they were like bathtubs. Bowls. They were like little fish bowls. I mean, it's a hotel and casino, right? In the middle of Scottsdale. So they just came in these giant vats. And I'm like, oh my gosh, we're supposed to go on air in less than an hour and we're going to be Yeah, it was an interesting interview, and I've watched it, and I'm not sure that we should have had that one, but
It worked well.
But it was a lot of fun. Mike is a great guy. He's a machine, but he's a great guy to work with.
Ah, good stuff. Jason, if people want to find out more information and get in contact with you for maybe some advice on how to turn their business around and have their business basically working for them instead of them just slaving away and going backwards, what's the best way to do that?
Best way, you can obviously email me. I know I have a Disc Jockey News account. I can't remember exactly what it is. I think it's Jason Spencer at DiscJockeyNews.com. If not, Jason at Profit Hood Academy, PROFITHOOD Academy.com. The website Profit Hood Academy, or just on Facebook. Very easy, Facebook / Profit Hood Academy. You'll find everything you need to know right there. I am one of the admins in sales for Event Pros as well, because sales, you can't really make a profit without the sale first. So I teamed up with Mitch and Vicky, and the three of us, we admin that group over there, and lots of great conversation happens over there. Not just DJs, we have all kinds of Event Pros in there. So sometimes you get to see other parts of the event industry and how that might translate into a DJ world too. So
yeah, I'm part of that group also. And every once in a while, when you see someone from a different non-DJ industry, and they have the exact same concerns, problems, issues that we do, it's like, whoa, maybe we aren't.
That was not to take up too much more time, but that was one of the big things I loved about Wedding MBA when I got to speak there. They had me on the main stage, and I gave the full Profit First presentation, and afterwards, and as you know, Wedding MBA, the primary attendee of Wedding MBA is a wedding planner, wedding coordinator, followed by venues. And then DJ photography is kind of an equal third and fourth place there. But I had a line of probably 75, 80 people after I presented. And the interesting thing was there was only one presentation after me. I had gone up in a block where there were 4 other presentations, but after myself was main stage. It was Sunny Ganguly from Wedding Wire. And I'm like, oh gosh, everybody's just going to stay in the room. They're going to watch Sunny.
Yes.
I want to stay in the room and watch Sunny. But I went out and I just have this line by the time I got out and got the microphone off and everything. And I chatted with probably 10% of those people were DJs. Everybody else was across the board in the event industry. And to hear the stories of, this is where I'm struggling, this is what I'm doing, this is where I'm having problems, and this makes so much sense. I wish I had found it 5 years ago, 2 years ago, 10 years ago, whatever it was when they started their business. That was the big thing. And actually, to sum up as we close out this, one of the questions I had in my weight loss group the other day, and I went in, was talking with my dietitian, and we were talking about slipping back into the old ways. So it was group conversations, wasn't a one-on-one, but the first question on our handout for the day was, what was your breaking point? What was it that made you want to come in and lose the weight? And then the follow-up question towards the end, which actually I scribbled on because it wasn't officially on the paperwork, but the follow-up question was, what habits do you recognize from your old way of life that you're not going to slip back into? So it was understanding what got me here and how did I get out of it and change and get into this other way. And so I think that's the big thing is, what is your DJ breaking point? What is your business owner breaking point? And what is it that's going to be that point in which you pick up the phone and you actually ask for help, or you send the email and you ask for help? I think so many of us in the Facebook society, we feel like we can throw a question out on Facebook and get the answer. And the truth is, what happens is the exact conversation where I started a question and Jamie Bodie had to defer somebody else and say, stop listening to everybody.
Right.
Find one person you trust, listen to that one person, and then move forward, not 20 different people that are telling you 20 different things.
And that's a Facebook thing, 20 different things.
Yeah, we think our breaking point is I posted this question on Facebook, but that's not the breaking point. The breaking point is I couldn't afford a loaf of bread this month and I'm in trouble and I got to figure out what to do. So that slow season's coming up. Reach out to somebody, and it doesn't have to be me. I mean, I'm one part of the equation. Someone like Mitch is another part of the equation. A workshop like Bill or Marbecca, those are other parts of the equation that all fit into the same ball of wax. So again, not advocating you only listen to one coach, but find the right team of coaches that are going to make the investment with you what it should be, not just you throwing money at the wall and seeing what sticks.
Good advice. Good advice. Jason, I want to thank you for being on with me today. And for those of you who are watching, keep kind of tabs on our channel today, because we are at DJ Expo live throughout the rest of the day. You're going to be seeing different little posts and such that are going to be going up. And then tonight, we're going to be going with a live show. Now, we're not exactly sure where. It's going to depend on bandwidth and internet and who we all grab. But be watching. That should be happening around 9 o'clock Eastern. So that's a little bit earlier than our typical show, but we'll catch you live from DJ Expo. Jason, thanks for being on with me today.
Thank you. Have fun at Expo too.
And we will.